Are there some children who have ended up in your provision who have suffered from their time in mainstream?
You're a teacher, but you're also a friend, role model, father figure, a counsellor, mentor, an educator, you're a leader. Yeah, we're still using detentions and isolation, where they're proven not to work.
We're joined today by Jamie Gilbert, 1.1 million TikTok followers, ADHD and SEMH advocate. Some people know that they want to be a teacher all their life. Is that you, or did teaching find you?
Teaching definitely found me. I had no aims in life to be a teacher. It wasn't part of my career plan. From a young age, I always wanted to go in the RAF. It was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a co-pilot. Was actually a weapons systems officer. Was the technical term for it. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do. So I got quite far in the actual formal process to be told that you're actually too young for that role. So I just got a letter through the post. So I just at home, and my mum like world upside down. Don't know what to do with my life. And she's a secondary school teacher in an SEMH school. And she said, "Why don't you come into my school as a volunteer?" I was just like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I went into that school. It was for children catered from 3 to 16 with social, emotional, mental health problems. And I was 17 at the time as a volunteer. And yeah, I was actually pretty much the same age as some of the Key Stage 4 boys. Yeah. And I had a massive baby face. I was getting mistaken for a student a lot of the time. I went in with a tracksuit and I was quite thin, and there was some of the year 11 lads were actually like probably bigger in stature and a bit more intimidating. But I found I had this kind of ability to be able to like relate to these children from an early age at 17. Head teachers, like the way you're able to react to these children and manage them is a skill in a sense. So I was volunteering for a week. And then the head teacher gave us a TA job straight away so this was around March or July. He said, "Go away, get your degree as a teacher, and come back and I'll give you a teaching position." So that's pretty much exactly what happened. I went away to Leeds Metropolitan University for 3 years. I wanted to do PE. So my degree was in PE, so I wanted to be a PE teacher in a sense, because the school I was volunteering in, they didn't really have great PE kind of resources or staff. They just kind of had people like filling in and covering, not like a specific PE teacher. And there was elements of the PE curriculum that like wasn't being covered, such as like dance and gymnastics. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about the dance obviously a little bit later. Yeah. So yeah, I went away for 3 years, got my degree, and then I went through the SCIT process in terms of getting my actual teaching qualification, because that's more classroom based. Mm-hmm. Like schools sent out initial teacher training, and opposed to like a PGCE, because I want to be more classroom based. So I went for a PE skit and I didn't get offered it. I was thinking, "Oh no, like what am I going to do now?" They're like, "Oh, don't worry, we want you to do primary." And I was just like, I can't teach like English and geography and history and everything else that comes with it. And like, I think it'd be really good to do primary and do everything. You can still do your PE, you can still specialise and do your PE, but I want you to do primary in a sense. So done a primary skit at the school I volunteered in, and then got offered a teaching position after that. That was in 2014, and then in 2020 I got offered as leader. So I did my middle leadership qualification, and now I'm middle leader of that exact school that I volunteered in at 17. So it's quite a cool story. Yeah, incredible. And the head teacher likes to remind everybody of it, of how I kind of went from volunteer like all the way up. Yeah, I was thinking like that, especially for the children and the students that you interact with, to kind of tell them the story. I think like maths maybe wasn't your best subject at school or something like that, but you Definitely can relate to them and say, you know, this was my journey. Like I wasn't perfect all the way through. There's a lot of things I see on kind of like parenting, social media bits about like reinforcing with your children that I don't expect you to be perfect all the time. Absolutely. And you can draw on that with your children. Absolutely. Well, I actually failed maths GCSE. I was sitting next to my best mate and we just messed around for 2
Yeah.
years, just messed around. So I actually had to resit it when I went to sixth form. But now I can teach maths to and I always get outstanding results teaching maths. So yeah, if you set your mind to something, you can definitely achieve it. For me, at that point, I did not set my mind to get anything out of maths, and that was a result of that. And then that had a consequence later down the line when I wanted to progress further.
Now, each day you work in an SEMH setting, which we'll come on to shortly. What does your normal day look like?
It's very different. So a lot of my day will be kind of analysing things that have happened prior to school. So I've got a lot of issues on Snapchat at the minute. With issues, boys texting, oh, he called me this on Snapchat, he's called me this. So we have a member of staff called a link worker who's designed to kind of plug the gap from home to school. So she's in constant communication with parents. So it would be like, she might get a text in the morning saying, oh, look, this lad's had this morning. He's not himself. He hasn't had breakfast. And then that message will get passed on to me so I can look at that and tailor my practice straight away. So I'll be like, oh, I've seen you haven't had breakfast. Come on, mate, we'll get you some breakfast now. So that's the actual before school bit is super important. But the actual running of the day, it's very structured and routine, which I find works best for children with ADHD.
I love how it's been identified, like this is the thing we need to get right first. We need to get them calm and regulated and allow them to access their learning rather than just assuming all the children come in happy to it.
Absolutely. So I'll scout the room in the morning and I'll look for signs if the child's not 100% themselves. So I've had cases where I know a child is definitely suffering from tiredness, and I've got a little kind of human dog bed at the back of my classroom, and I've had children sleep in there.
Really?
So yeah, so it's kind of going back to the Haslow's kind of needs first, your food, your shelter, and your safety before trying to do anything kind of academic and pushing that. So I've had children who slept for 2-3 hours and then they've caught up on the maths and English work later. But it's just kind of addressing the basic human needs first, which it kind of might not get taken into consideration as much in a class of 30.
Yeah, we all need big dog beds at the back of our classrooms. And then do you do structured? So is it maths and English in the mornings?
So yeah, so Monday to Thursday, first thing the children will come into a morning task. It'll be a different thing. It could be handwriting because that stimulates a side of the ADHD brain which is quite repetitive and it's quite common. So even something like handwriting, you think, oh, that's super boring, but for an ADHD child, that's actually soothing. So we'll always come into a morning task. So morning task, and then we'll have our reading lesson 1, lesson 2 English, lesson 3 maths, then into dinner. So that happens Monday to Thursday. So there's that complete consistency, routines, boundaries, expectations, which is apparent from the throughout. So that's Monday to Thursday, and Friday is where it gets a little bit different. We'll have the SMH curriculum, which we'll come on to a little bit later.
So your classroom, I've seen your classroom because I follow you on TikTok. It's a really interesting insight into what learning looks like at your school. It looks like a challenging place to work, and it seems, I bet we only see the positive side on TikTok. Is that correct?
It can be. It is obviously these children have severe mental health issues, and they are predominantly band 5 behaviour. So behaviours classed as goes from 1 to 5, 5 being the worst. And our children often show that type of band 5 behaviour. So it's the type of extreme behaviour that no other school can manage. So we get the children that are branded kind of unteachable. So it's trying to get them, trying to kind of promote those ready to learn behaviours and what that kind of looks like. So it could be different. It'll be differentiated per child as well.
And you have, so it's not a class of 30.
No,
it's smaller numbers than that.
Yeah, it's a smaller class set, and on average we have class sizes between 6 to 8 students. And with always you have like a ratio within that. So I've got a class currently of 7 students, and there's me as a class teacher and my TA as well.
Since you've been a leader at your school, have there been big changes or have there been improvements in the statistics?
Absolutely. So probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we were very firm but fair, quite a authoritarian approach to behaviour management, kind of like 2 choices, you're doing this or this is happening. So you're doing this or there could be a consequence for it. We're kind of shifted now to this PACE approach. So the PACE approach was created by a guy called Dan Hughes, and it stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And it's a different way of looking at mental health and what I call surface behaviour. So you have surface behaviour, that's what you see. And then you have non-surface behaviour. So if you imagine, like, obviously you've probably seen like the tip of the iceberg. This is the behaviour you see. Underneath is everything else. So PACE kind of unpicks that a little bit more. So we could use things like humour. So it could be if a child's escalating a bit, we could do like a little joke just to turn around. But that's when understanding the child is so important, because I could use humour for one boy with ADHD and humour might not work for an ASD child, for instance. Mm-hmm. It's about knowing that individual and what strategy works best.
And have you seen, with your new approach, have you seen like number of restraints reduce?
Absolutely. I've had one student who came to me the year before with about 60 or 70 restraints.
Wow.
In year 5, he came to me in year 6 and he had 0.
0
restraints. So I actually got a phone call from his mother at the end of the school year saying, "You've changed this kid's life." And I was just like, wow. I'm getting goosebumps now when I have to say that again. That was enough for me, for my career, basically, to have that. He got us like a little signed, little printed poem that's in me little office. I say office, it's like a Harry Potter teaching cupboard, but it's got office on the door. So yeah, that definitely went from 60, 70 restraints to 0, and people ask, what did you do? And I was just like, I just built like a strong, secure, positive relationship over time. And this lad was able to trust us and relax, and he didn't feel on edge. The environment was secure, which in turn reduced his restraints. He was more ready to learn. He was constantly outside the classroom. He was never in it. In year 5, and he was never out of it. So it could have just been like a maturity thing. It could have been just a change of environment. It could have been the impact I had. So the thing is with SEM teaching, you're a teacher, but you're also you're a friend, you're a role model, you're a father figure, you're a counsellor, you're a mentor, you're an educator, you're a leader. So my role is not just standing up in front of the classroom and saying, "Today we're learning about what an adverb is." It's way more than that.
I know as a teacher, my mind never stops thinking about the children in my class, and sometimes about the paperwork and the lessons and the planning and those types of things. Is it a different cognitive load for you because you're being the mentor and the care and the father figure as well? Do you never stop thinking about them?
Yeah. So there'll be case studies historically that'll sit with you for life. That doesn't go away. So yeah. And
does your school have a padded cell anymore? Is that
no?
A thing?
So when I was first there, there was a padded cell, which basically, if you imagine like a soft play, it was just like a padded area, and when the children were in crisis, you should just be kind of guided in and then shut the door and let out some steam. But it's obviously completely evolved since then, thankfully.
Yeah.
We don't use padded cells. I've created a sensory room now. So that's it. I didn't realise, but there's actually two types of sensory rooms. There's down regulation and up regulation. So up regulation is if you go in to try and you're coming up and you're still kind of up a height. So it'll be things like ball pits and stuff. Mm-hmm. So you're going in and you're getting kind of hyper, but it's kind of releasing a little bit of energy. Down regulations where you would go in at a height of intensity, the height of crisis, and it'll bring you right down. So at the minute we've got like we've got like a projector playing. It'll be like projecting the oceans. Then you've got like ocean sounds, and you've got bubble tubes, and it's very calming. So I've created ours for down regulation. So the purpose of that is when a child is feeling It's when the behaviour starting to escalate. Be, oh, I just want to go in the sensory room for 5-10 minutes just to chill out. Oh yeah, and then they'll go in 5-10 minutes, reset, get them back to kind of ready to learn mindset. Back in the classroom, 10 minutes missed. It's not a major thing. It's saved what could have been a restraint that could have lasted 2-3 times, or sometimes it could be multiple. So it's just kind of like spotting the triggers before they happen, which it comes with experience, but obviously and knowledge.
It's amazing as well that you've created a culture where the children are happy to accept that as well. I know children I've worked with before and children in my family, when they're maybe a little bit tired and somebody might say to them, oh, are you feeling a bit tired? No, I'm not tired. I can imagine, do you want to go to the sensory room? No, I don't want to go in there. Yeah. But they're kind of accepting that.
It sometimes that does happen. I don't want to do that. And you sometimes have that kind of battle. Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this movement break? Do I do some gardening outside? And the trick with our type of children is to get them to use their words. That is the biggest challenge. So we've said, like, just talk, use your words. Like, I'm good, I'm not a mind reader. So I'll often say that to the boys as well, which they'll laugh about. So if there's something bothering you, it's come and get it off your chest. I'll always refer to us blokes as being terrible at this. Saying like us blokes will not use our words, will not speak out about our mental health. It's seen as a weakness. Crying, it's perceived as a weakness. I cry all the time. I'll tell my students that's nothing wrong. That's showing emotion, and that's completely fine. The thing with ADHD, there's a defective gene. I think it's a D2, which sounds like R2D2. So I always wrote, but that's how I remember it. And it's to do with the dopamine, and the transmitter from that being slightly faulty in a sense. So there's a kind of a lack of dopamine. Dopamine is what controls your emotions, and it's the ability to regulate your emotions. So it's just trying to, and that's obviously what medication can help with. It helps to control those levels of dopamine, so that you can be able to co-regulate your emotions and manage these stressful situations.
And one of your ways of getting them back on board, it seems like from TikTok again, is going outside, playing a bit of football. Yeah. And that's developed further now.
Yeah, so decided to create a football team, SEMH United. So I think it was probably about a year and a half ago, I had a class who were really gifted at football, probably about 4 or 5 who could play in a mainstream football team, but kind of wouldn't be able to cope in terms of like that emotional regulation, how to deal with frustration, resilience, how to deal with it if a player kind of kicks you off the ball or, like pulls your shirt, and that kind of physical contact. I was like, how do you deal with that? So I decided, you know what, I'm going to create my own football team for these type of children. I'm going to consult the children, see what they think about it, and see if we can create a new project. So that happened. So the team's called SEMH United, and I've been I've done all my coaching qualifications. So yeah, I've done all that. Got like various training just to be qualified and to be able to do that. I had like first aid and stuff, even just to facilitate training. So what it looks like at the minute is just weekly training, getting the children off the streets, and obviously enhancing their social skills. But we've got to the point now where we're starting to design kits. So that's really cool. So our kit's all orange. So the official colour of ADHD is orange, because it shows like the brightness of the condition in terms of like energy and creativity and being spontaneous and things like that. So it's all orange. And then this term coming up summer too, we'll have our first competitive little friendly game. So that's going to be interesting.
Again, I love how you talk about this. And I do a little bit of early years training, and there's part of our early years training where we talk about sorting and classifying objects. And an example that I always use is in early years classroom, you might have a fruit shop set up, and over the summer, you've set up where the oranges go, where the bananas go, where the grapefruit go. And then the children come in and they just move it all around and change it. And actually, if we involve the children in those decisions about where we're going to sort things, it sticks with them much longer. And they've been involved in those conversations. They've got ownership of it. The same in your water area, same in the sand area. Allowing the children to make those choices is a really positive thing. And everything you spoke about then was saying, we've created a football team. We've designed our kits. We're designing our crest. Like they've got an active involvement in this. And you consulted them whether it was something they wanted to do. It wasn't just, this is happening to you.
Well, that's it.
We've been talking about SEND and SEMH and ADHD. So I think it's worth just defining those terms so we know what we're talking about. So SEMH, your school is an SEMH school.
Yes. So you can have a PRU, which is a pupil referral unit, or you can have a SEMH school, which is a school for children with social, emotional, mental health difficulties. So a PRU is relatively smaller. So we've got, as an SEMH school, I think we've got about 150 children on roll. It originally started as a site for 6 children.
Wow.
So
and the age ranges?
So the age ranges is from 3-year-old all the way up to 16. So you've got 3-year-olds being excluded from mainstream and being coming to our school in a sense. So every child has to have an EHCP to come to our school. We can talk about that later, what an EHCP is and advice and stuff on how to get one. So every child needs an EHCP, but SEMH provision.
And SEMH is social, emotional, mental health.
Yeah, so it's transitioned from being referred to as EBD, emotional behavioural difficulties, where we've kind of unpicked behaviour has got a clear link to mental health. So we've dropped the behaviour from it altogether. So social, emotional, mental health.
Whereas ADHD?
ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactive disorder. It's a fascinating kind of description of it. I kind of disagree with the terminology of ADHD in terms of the deficit. I don't think that there is a deficit. I think it can be, but it's often interest-based. If there's a deficit, how do you have this amazing, wonderful ability to hyperfocus on something you're interested in? And the challenge for me is, how do I get my children to hyperfocus on, writing a paragraph? Because I've been able to do it. And it's to do with making my content engaging, creative, and capturing that attention. If my children aren't interested in it, I'm going to get worse outcomes in terms of like progress. So is there really a deficit if you can hyperfocus? And so hyperfocus is this deep, intense focus that you can literally concentrate for an extended amount of time. I'm talking like you can 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours. And everyone's hyperfocus is different. So I've done work through a SEMH curriculum. So on a Friday, we do a standalone lesson on SEMH that we're evidencing in the books. So it could be things like resilience training, identifying your anger triggers, looking at fight or flight. So why do you have these responses to ADHD? Why do when you're faced with an intense situation and your brain's stressed, why do you run away or why do you fight? Because you're one or the other. And we're trying to unpick that. So
and you're teaching the children about these feelings and emotions and the way their body's working so they can understand it better.
Absolutely. As a part of our SEMH curriculum, we'll have, throughout the term, we'll look at different mental health conditions. So we'll do work on ADHD, autism, Asperge, dyslexia.
And I bet they're saying, that's me, I do that.
Like some of them, but then it's also really nice for them to relate to other children around the department to be like, that's what that's got, isn't it? And that's why he's doing this because of that. And his brain's wired a little bit differently. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So it's also having an understanding of others around them in the SMH environment. So in our environment, SMH, ADHD is predominantly the main mental health diagnosis, but obviously we have other things of Asperger's, ASD, dyslexia, ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder. I've had a child with that in the past. That's fascinating condition to work with. You're trying to like program yourself as a teacher to kind of say the opposite. So, which is really hard to do. So it could be a thing like, there's no way you're going to get that job done. There's no way you're going to get that task done. Well, I'm going to prove Mr. Jamie wrong. I'm going to get it done, type of thing. But if you just said, right, pick up your pencil now, he's not going to pick up his pencil. So it's really fascinating because you've got the other 5, 6 lads who don't have that. So you're just trying to like accommodate everybody. So that was I learned a lot from that condition. A fascinating condition, that one.
I can see the smile on your face and the interest.
Like, I got a lot of that wrong. I got a lot of that wrong with the ODD one. So yeah, I learned a lot from that. The hyper side of it and being able to focus on something like hyperfocus that's contradictory, I think, to most people's understanding of ADHD. Absolutely. They assume that you're kind of flitting from one thing to another. But yeah, I'd never heard that ability to kind of have 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 120 minutes just focusing on one thing. When we do our lessons on ADHD and we'll pick the ADHD brain a little bit, a lot of the time we'll look at, what could be your hyperfocus? And it's normally like a similar thing. So you'll be like, football, love football, like hyperfocus on football for 90 minutes. Like, brilliant. Gaming is a very popular one. So like hyperfocus, gaming, I had one, cars. So it's just trying to kind of understand what the hyperfocus is. I had a lad a couple of years ago who art was his hyperfocus. And kind of ADHD, perfectionism and art is something that kind of links as well. For some obviously styles of ADHD, there's obviously different types, but kind of understanding that hyperfocus. And you get that kind of, obviously that deep, intense focus on something you're engaged in. So it's just trying to figure out, what is it that I'm engaged in? What is my hyperfocus? And for me, if I can make my lessons as creative and engaging as I can, you can kind of unlock hyperfocus. So OFSTED came in last week to one of my English lessons, and we're finishing off our stories. We've been studying wholes. So we're looking at our own kind of flashback stories. And they came in and all the children were hyper-focusing basically. And so they were like just ridiculously on task and the lesson ran over. And that's obviously fine in my type of environment where I'm going to be like, my lessons kind of ran over because I'm teaching them throughout the day anyway. And that they'll all pan out. And if it cuts into 5 minutes of maths, I can get that back another time. But when it goes to secondary, that's a lot more difficult. So you don't have the opportunity because it's a lot more timed. And so there's like a bell, and when that buzzer goes off, you transition to the next room, to the next room, to the next room. So
I think there'll be lots of teachers watching this and listening to this thinking, I recognise that in some of the children in my class, and I taught mainstream.
Yeah.
And one of the schools I taught at had a resource provision attached, and there were children with ASD who would come into our lessons and they'd be on 80% timetables. And that was absolutely fantastic for the other children in the class because they would spot these little boys and girls and notice that their brain works in a slightly different way. And I've noticed that this is a trigger for them. Should we try and be really calm and quiet when so-and-so comes in because I know that he or she doesn't enjoy that type of environment. And they became so empathetic and so caring.
Yeah.
And they wanted to learn more. And it wasn't part of our curriculum to talk about mental health. Yeah. But we've got a huge section on that later, haven't we, where we want it to be part of the curriculum, and using there's huge advantages that come with that.
Absolutely. So ADHD, it was only officially recognised by the NHS in 2000.
Really, 2000.
So that's relatively new. So we're still learning about ADHD now. So if you look pre-2000, there's a lot of people like my age in their 30s are being diagnosed late because we're understanding what actually that could be me or this applies to me. So I've been involved in referring hundreds of children in my teaching career. So I'm involved in that process where we'll have a referral, and I'm looking at all these traits and thinking, does he have this? Does he have this? Does he have this? And I'm looking at this thinking, I'm hitting 95% of this criteria. And the more I'm working with ADHD, this amazing condition on a daily basis, the more I'm realizing that I have massive traits of this myself as an adult. So I'm currently currently awaiting an ADHD adult diagnosis.
Wow.
Myself. So my aim would be to kind of use this diagnosis, if I get it, and kind of inspire people and use ADHD as a positive thing. There's so much negative stigma attached to ADHD. Oh, it's bad parenting. Oh, it's just a lazy person. Well, it's not. It's a neurological condition. It affects your brain. Your brain's wired differently. So when you get comments of like, oh, it's just bad parenting, or just bad behaviour, or just a naughty child, it's not. It's neurological. You can't argue with brain science. And obviously the NHS has officially recognised this in 2000. We're still kind of learning about this medically as well. So obviously there's a dopamine. We've been exploring dopamine and the effects that had that, and how that links to ADHD. And we still don't really know like what the root causes are. There's links to the kind of a lack of oxygen at birth, and that can put some stress on the brain. It could be like that, or it's through like trauma or environmental from a very early age, like 0 to 3. But we're still kind of learning about this.
I can see how passionate you are and how much you love your job. And it's really nice meeting teachers, because all the teachers I meet absolutely love their job and love what they do. And then it seems to me that you love like the day-to-day 9 till 3 teaching, but then also all of the investigative learning that you're doing and finding out about your subject and about your children and about yourself. Like it seems as well. What are your favourite bits of teaching? Is that a hard question?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I think that the light bulb moment is still got to be up there, especially with an ADHD child who's just about to give up. So on the cusp of giving up, and the battle through, and then they get the concept at the end, and then they give me a fist pump and then they're just like, that kind of relief, because you know they're trying to get there, but they kind of the brain's kind of stopping them a little bit, especially in maths where it's like right or wrong, and it's not in English where you can be a bit more creative. So yeah, when a child's just about to give up, I like being able to scoop in and be like, right, how am I going to get this kid? Or the classic one would be like, oh, I'm not doing this, Mr. G. I'll be like, right, here we go. So I'll be like, so I'll be like, right, what can I do? I can use distraction, I can use humour. How am I going to get this lad back on task? I like that part of the job, and being faced with that kind of adverse challenge.
You've said a couple of times, I need my lessons to be really engaging and really exciting. Yeah. How do you make your lessons engaging?
You just obviously, I'm just picking things from the national curriculum and just trying to adapt it in a positive way. So if I like poetry, for example, I'll often rap to the kids just to get them going, and that's not actually in the curriculum, rapping. So but there's massive links from poetry to rap. It's all to do with rhyme, and so. Yeah, it's about taking elements of the national curriculum, and you can be creative with it, and you just gotta think outside the box and think. Or it could be something as simple as if I'm teaching, I don't know, 4-digit addition, and I'm looking at regrouping, and the kids aren't getting it, I might just get them out of their seats and just get them to do like a little like a 5-10 minute movement break, and just to reset them and then come back to it. So it's just trying to incorporate all these clever little things to try and accommodate the ADHD brain, in a sense.
Do you find your teaching strategies have changed year on year, dependent on the children that are in your class? Are some children more, like you said, you had a really talented football group, so that might be linking into it. But then the next year you try the football thing and it doesn't work. Yeah, absolutely. You normally have like a kind of common interest in the class, and you can kind of go with that. Football's normally there historically; it normally comes up. But I've obviously taught girls in the past who have not been interested in football whatsoever. So for one of the girls, she was struggling a little bit with her choices. I said, you know what, if you have a really positive week, you can paint me nails, because I know you're desperate to do that. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah, you can do it. Obviously, she had an amazing week, didn't she? So I was like, painting my nails. Love that. So just be kind of just being like as relatable. And I've noticed if you have a kind of an incentive to work towards, so we'll have kind of like a weekly reward trip at the end. So if you have something to work towards, your type of
mindset can change more positively towards that.
And are they earning time on that? Or is it you'll get this trip and if you're not well behaved, then you lose it?
So we have internal rewards and like external rewards. So we do it on a point system. So every lesson you get a point score. It's broken down. So you have 10 points. You have 5 points for behaviour and 5 points for like work related tasks. And then they're broken down. So you have like 2 points for your behaviour target, like 1 point for appropriate language, 1 point for being ready to learn, and 1 point for like respecting resources and things like that.
So lots of opportunity for success, lots of opportunities to earn these points. And if you make a mistake somewhere, it's not all gone.
No, so you're aiming for pretty much 7 points per lesson. And they get added up in it, and we've got like a spreadsheet. They get added up to the end of the week, and the top 2-3 points from each class will go on the external trip. So the people are obviously always fighting for that kind of the 8, 9, 10 points to try and go to that trip. But those who have still made rewards, and we get like 7s and 8 points. I'll do like internal rewards where I'll do like pool and like football, gaming. We've got like a really cool steering wheel with the pedals that's linked up to a car game at the minute, which they all love. They do the gears and things like that. But yeah, there's times where children won't make rewards. So there might be a bit where we'll have to do some catch-up work. So it'll be if they've missed anything, say, "Oh, Mr. G, I'm not doing this maths today." I said, "That's fine, mate. If you don't want to do it today, but we'll have to come back to it Friday. You know the score. We've been doing this a long time, and so it'll come to the Friday, and I'll sit through them with them and we'll catch up on like on maths or whatever we've missed, and then they'll access the internal rewards at a later time."
I like that they can have a crisis and they're not losing all their points. They've got that specific area and they know they're always working towards something. And there's this external reward, which sounds like fantastic trips and things. And then there's also the internal reward as well. So they know they're going to be rewarded for their effort. They're never going to get to a position where they try really hard for 4 days. They have a rubbish Friday morning and they lose everything. Yeah. They know that they've earned that.
We do a lot of like fresh start approach as well. So if a child has had a crisis or an incident, as soon as they come back in the classroom, like, "Oh, you made it right," and with a fist bump, and it's resetting straight away. A lot, especially in the past, I've seen professionals kind of hold a grudge against that child. You got to think that's just surface behaviour. And when I was referring to that, what's all the non-surface behaviour? What's actually going on? There could be something off at home that you don't even know about. And for this child just to even be present today is a massive achievement. He could have easily been not been at school altogether, or he's gotten out of bed and he's been able to get here, which is success in itself. So we use Fresh Start all the time. And we do repair and reflect exercises. So after an incident, that relationship will be that relationship you have with a student will be tested. It won't be broken, not if you put loads of years into it, but it will be like it will kind of be remembered. So we'll do activities to kind of repair that straight away, which is really important, because if you don't.
What type of thing would you do to repair?
It could be things like playing a game with the child, like having a game on FIFA, or having like some one-on-one like football time, or something a little bit more personal. So it's just kind of you and the student. So it's normally a bit of gaming, it could be a bit of colouring.
And are the other children with another adult at this point? And you just kind of whisk them off and just have that 5 minutes?
Or if, because I'm the one who's in the classroom, so I'm all classroom based. Like my TA can go out and do that as well. So I've got a fantastic TA who's got an amazing relationship with his children, very naturally nurturing. So it'd be like, so if an incident happens, how are we going to repair it? It could be as simple as revisiting that, like an hour later, 10 minutes later, when that child's ready, and just having a chat about it. And just explaining why why we've had to have hands-on, in a sense.
And it's important to do it a short time later, so you're not trying to resolve that like at the point of crisis or soon after. Everybody's calmed down, everyone's regulated, and then you revisit.
Well, you go up your anger mountain and you come back down it. So you need to make sure if you're revisiting it, you're not at the anger mountain. You'll be able to tell the signs of that just by like body language, by facial expression, by general presentation. That comes with experience. But yeah, you wouldn't repair the relation, because at that point the ADHD brain is not listening to you when they're at that point of crisis. So it doesn't matter what you say, you're just gonna get a kind of verbal abuse back, because that's where we're at now. So it's just a point of how can I bring this brain back down? And physical intervention is one strategy that we use. It's 5% of our practice, so it's used very rarely. So we use 95% non-de-escalation strategies, such as humour, movement breaks, timeout, change of face, change of adult. That's so important.
I love change of face, because you see, don't you, that both people, the child and the adult, neither of them are regulated.
Absolutely.
And you just need that change of face.
But that's the difficult thing in mainstream. If you're a class teacher and you've got 30 children, and you've got to a point where a child's escalating, and you've got nobody who can do change of face and step in, that's got to present some issues.
And you only need 5 minutes.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be a huge amount. It's definitely something
we're really lucky in terms of I've got a phenomenal staff team, and we use change of face. We'll often swap out each other. And it got to a point where in the past, when you're kind of pursuing an incident and you want to see something through, that staff were kind of reluctant to be like, well, no, I'm dealing with this. But now we're in a position collectively to be like, yeah, I'm stepping away. Yeah. The kind of pride element's gone, because you can kind of get like involved in the ego side of it. Well, I'm dealing with this incident, I'm going to solve it. But actually, you're not actually the best person at the time to solve it. So if you stepping away and someone else coming in and be like, it could be solved a lot quicker. And we're really good as a team at recognising that now.
There must have been times where you've got it a little bit wrong, or a child's done something unexpected. Has there been times like that? Absolutely.
So my first day in an SEMH environment, I was a volunteer at 17. And I was on yard duty, so this is at dinner time, and we had these crazy, like these go-karts, these drifting like green machine things where the kids can like pull a lever and they do like this drift, and they're loving it. So I'm just kind of supervising a few lads using them. We've all got the helmets on, and I noticed this one kid's like really going for it, like he's pedaling like super quick. I think that's going to be a good drift. And he drifts in the car kind of does like a little kind of flip over. See, like the go-kart flips over, he's kind of like face planted. So like he's pretty much on like, yeah, just like face planted in front of him. So I go running over as a volunteer, obviously concern, duty of care. Like I've got this duty of care, I need to make sure this child's all right. I was like, you're right, mate, you're right. So as he steps up, he turns around and punches me straight in the nose.
Really?
And I'm just, so that was he must have felt, I think he felt embarrassed in front of like there was 3 or 4 other lads there that I've went over to like, try and help. He's punched me in the face. And I've just been like, this is amazing. This is the right setting for me. So a lot of people would be like, God, like this, what's going on here? And I was just like, I was so shocked by it, but I was like kind of impressed at the same time. So yeah.
So you ran over, best intentions, wanted to help him up. And usually, like, the children are a bit upset. Of course. And this boy just turns around and punches you in the nose.
This is, bear in mind, this is my first day of kind of education. I'm expecting they might want to like a little cuddle or to make sure he's all right, a bit of faith. Might take him to see a first aider. No, he just turns around and it was a cracking punch straight in the nose. And I was just like, wow. So I ended up, I wasn't trained in, it was team teach at the time, which was the safe physical intervention we used. I wasn't trained in that, so he's ended up guided in by another member of staff for assaulting an adult, which was me at the time, fairly an adult at 17. But yeah, at that point, I was just like, I need it. This is what I want to make a difference with these type of children. And I was just kind of fell in love with the environment in a weird way. So that kind of punch, kind of just like, whoa, it kind of gave us my career path in a sense.
And then, like, not going into specifics, but I imagine you've potentially been in like threatening environments or confrontations.
Yeah. Constantly. It's got to a point now. I'm really lucky in my practice that the environment is very safe and secure. I haven't had any fights in my classroom for 2 years. A lot of stuff happens like in the yard, you know, like the more unstructured times. And that's just due to the kind of environment that I've created. and just building that time with like the positive relationships. So I've got to a point where these children kind of idolizes in a way. I know it sounds a bit cringy, but they'll do anything for me, and I'll do anything in return for them. So I think I'll take my time to do the SEMH United and stuff, and the kids are really, really grateful. Which is probably one of my triggers is ungratefulness. But these ADHD children that come from obviously deprived backgrounds, and you would probably consider them not to be grateful. Sometimes they're quite abrupt, and sometimes ADHD can come off as rude. But with these children are using the manners. Oh, Mr. J, can I have a slice of toast? Like, yeah, of course you can. And just trying to get them. Just trying to improve their manners so they can make like a positive contribution in society. That is the aim of our school ultimately, is to reform these children and kind of retrain them, get them to understand their conditions, understand their own triggers, and then how can you actually make a positive contribution in society? What is that child communicating through their behaviour? So a child who's been irrational and lashing out is trying to communicate something to you. If they're communicating that might not feel safe, something could be underlying, could be happening. They could be going through some trauma that we don't even know about. So it's to do with kind of spotting all those signs and kind of taking them into consideration.
How does 8,000 followers and your friends sharing it around because you shaved your head turn into 1 million followers?
3 years ago, following two boys who came in because they bring their phones in from the taxi, but it goes into my top drawer at the end of the day because I can't have the phones until year 7 is year 6. So 2 year 6 boys came in with their phones from the taxi and said, Mr. J, have you seen this TikTok? So I was like, what's TikTok? I had no idea what it was. And it was just like a kind of a dance. It was a trending dance on TikTok at the time. And I was just like, all right, okay. And I was doing it in computing. I was doing e-safety, so we're looking at how do you like respond to like negative comments and stuff online. And I thought, you know what? I wonder if I can use TikTok to cover all the e-safety points and get across what I'm doing. Like kind of explore like how do you go how do you go viral, or how do you respond to a negative comment? So can I do that? But then can I also focus it on the SMH side to build relationships with these children that nobody can build relationships with in enough hindsight, basically. So can I use it to develop those relationships, have some fun, and can I educate the children on how to deal with negativity? Because you're gonna come across negativity online at some point. It's just a part of it.
And was this the rap? Because the first video on your TikTok
so the
rap.
The first video was a rap and a music lesson. So
and this is you rapping.
This is me rapping. Yeah, well, it's actually called MCing, which is like a northeast thing, but it's like a fast rap in a sense. So that was the first one, and then the second one was a video with three students. But the process of making the TikTok was amazing. We got so much out of it, which you don't see behind the scenes, like us all giggling and laughing. And it's obviously done at times where it's like in between. It's normally at the end of the week. So I had to actually start the project. There was obviously various avenues of consent that I had to get. So first of all, I had to get parental consent. I had to get head teacher approval, GDPR approval, and then the local authority had to approve it, which is the LADO. So I had to get like various avenues of consent.
Because you were filming it in school and there would be students involved.
Because there were children who aren't 13 in it. So there's, as me as the owner of the account, has to be over 13. So there's children on TikTok who, there's obviously babies on there, but the actual owner of the content is an adult, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
So I had obviously to feature these children, I had to explain like why I wanted to do it. And I had to kind of write to the head teacher, the school governors, not really thinking, they're going to kind of go for it. They might not. They came back and said, I think it's an amazing idea. We love what you're doing. And the way the head teacher put it, you kind of raising awareness of SMH, and you put in the school in a positive light. And I was just like, oh, well, that's amazing.
And even if nothing comes from it,
even
the
if
children are getting a positive.
nothing comes of it, the process of us making a daft dance together, still strengthening those relationships, which is obviously really difficult with SMH children, is to get that. And we're doing it for a fun, digital way. We're living in a digital age. So if me as a creator can, Mr. G's create your TikTok account, you're going to have 1.1 million followers and 14 million likes. I'll be like, nah. So it's kind of achieved its goal. So the next steps is for Mr. G persona to hit more of a bigger audience. So my goal is, can we kind of replicate the SMH curriculum that I've incorporated as a leader in our primary department? Can that be incorporated throughout mainstreams? So I'm going to try and push that. I'm looking at
having time on the curriculum to look at SEMH and ADHD and ASD.
Yeah,
so all children will learn about it like your children do.
Absolutely. I want like a subject, like a standalone subject, like a one-off lesson a week. So we do it for like 40 minutes to an hour, one SEMH lesson a week, which is broken down into a variety of different things. Like I've currently rolled out, I've helped create it in our provision. So it'll be a case of, can this be rolled out? We're still not educating children around mental health. We all know it's there. Since lockdown, our children have suffered in mental health, yet we're not actually educating them around what mental health is. Like our children didn't even know what SEMH stood for. So that was my first thing. Like, do you know what SEMH stands for? And do you know what ADHD stands for? Do you know this about ADHD? Do you know you can hyperfocus? And just trying to educate around that, because if you got ADHD, it's your brain. You're stuck with it. You can either think, oh, if I'm ADHD, I'm doomed, or you think, you know what, I'm gonna utilize ADHD. I'm gonna educate myself around my triggers. I'm gonna understand my brain better, and I'm gonna be able, as a result, I'm gonna be able to cope better in life.
And now you're influencing parents, but also BBC, DFE. Tell us about that. Yeah,
so the DFE got in touch through TikTok. Love the account. And when OFSTED came in, loved it as well. So I'm being able to kind of spread and promote things I do, my teaching journey, what SMH is, to a wider audience. It's obviously more nationally. So yeah, it's been really cool.
And then with the BBC, I know you're really passionate about kind of the offering that they give and their bite-size stuff, and wanting to include like SEMH on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was looking at the BBC bite-size, amazing resources, and they do lots of different reels, educational videos for a variety of different subjects. So the subjects obviously like your art, and they do things like Mandarin and Welsh, but there's literally nothing for mental health. So my argument would be, if we're not doing like training on type of like resilience and like toxic stress, and looking at the two different types of stress and getting children to cope with all these feelings, if you haven't got any of that, how are you able to learn and progress and before doing anything academic really? If you look at like exam situations, like the Key Stage 2 stats, for example, a lot of the children feel so much pressure that they're underperforming and they don't do well. And there's no support in terms of mental health or, like opportunities to talk, and there's no resources for mental health, which is such a massive underlying issue. So we've been seeing now since COVID, like the mental health of our children has suffered massively, yet we haven't got any resources or anything out there to help.
So sort of like we're asking them to apply their understanding of their knowledge. So we're kind of saying, right, we need you to stay calm, we need to focus. But if we put that in a maths context, we're asking them to use their times tables, but we haven't taught them their times tables.
Yeah.
We're asking them to be resilient and be calm, but we've not taught them to be calm and be resilient.
I haven't taught the children about stress, resilience, like you say, how to deal with like anxiety as well.
From a TikTok point of view, I've seen your advice to parents and advice to teachers, and one of the things that really struck me, one of the ones I really liked, was about shouting, and you just saying,
yes,
listen, shouting doesn't work. It doesn't help the situation. What's your key bits of advice? If we go to teachers first, mainstream teachers, what would your key bits of advice be? Shouting doesn't work.
No.
Building relationships?
Building relationships is the fundamental of managing behaviour. If you've got a strong relationship with that child, behaviour is going to be better. There's research and there's so much evidence that supports that. A positive relationship is going to create a safer, secure environment. It's going to lead to more progress, both holistically inside the child, but also academically as well, in terms of getting those steps of progress that you need.
And that's built not just by giving the child everything they want. It's about boundaries and respect and expectations.
Absolutely. It's being firm but fair, but also being nurturing and empathetic.
There's not always a rush or a focus to have an EHCP, but ADHD children could be struggling to perform academically, but also could be very high performers academically. What would your advice be from a parent talking to the school? How's best to communicate their thoughts?
I would just be open and honest and just kind of list all the things that the child's struggling with and kind of see if you can relate that to school.
And I imagine the school is probably doing things for this child that they don't do for every other child.
Yeah, for some,
and they're not huge things, but there'll be little things, and they're worth referencing.
It's the communications obviously is vital. Having that communication from school to home, and often that communication can be a bit distant. Mm-hmm. So we're really fortunate to have a link worker who provides us a link between home and school. The EHC process is such a long process.
And you go through that with the special educational needs coordinator at school, the SENCO. But then if this does develop and there might be an ASD diagnosis or something like that, there can be 60+ week waiting times. So is your advice that we need to do all we can at home first, and then the diagnosis doesn't solve anything, it just might bring extra advice and extra help at school? Yeah,
well, the diagnosis can come with medication attached, which obviously may help. I've seen medication change kids' lives. It's when I first started, like back in 2013, 14, ADHD was still kind of seen as a little bit of a myth then. And it's just like, it's just like bad parenting or bad behaviour. It wasn't until, this is me being naive as like a first year teacher, it wasn't until I had a child with ADHD coming unmedicated that I was just like, wow, okay, this lad is like off the walls. Amazing. But it's like, I'm really struggling to manage him without his medication. And that's when I've seen it. And obviously, the medication is helping increase levels of dopamine and stuff. And medication can change a child's life. I've seen it. Medication isn't the solution to everyone. If I get diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, I probably won't take medication, but I'll be explaining on how I've been able to manage and what I use in Hyperfocus and the benefits of like exercise and cold water therapy and other things that I've been trying. So yeah.
And sometimes it's naturally producing things that are in the medication, things like melatonin to help with like sleep cycles and, like you say, dopamine. Yeah. Are there some children who have ended up in your provision who have suffered from their time in mainstream?
Yeah, you could say that. Mainstream practitioners do a fantastic job. We obviously having a class of 30 plus children by yourself it's a different type of challenge. But there are things that could be changed in mainstream education or to be more inclusive. For example, just shouting. We're trained not to shout. Basically, you can raise your voice slightly, but it will never go to that. The number 5 voice that is what they've kind of called it in mainstream. So because shouting with an ADHD child or a child who's been through trauma can actually create secondary trauma. It can bring back all these feelings of emotion and rejectment and isolation, and it can actually have a negative impact on mental health, and it won't modify behaviour positively. So it'll be like, I wouldn't use shouting at all.
And we're talking about children in early years in primary and in secondary here, these are kind of across the board advice.
Yeah, we teach our children the importance of personal space and intimate space, and how you shouldn't invade someone's personal space. But there's examples of mainstream practitioners, going back to my experience as a child. The main thing I can relate to, where I've had teachers right up into my face, like not in personal space. The personal space is from your arm to your tip of your finger. Intimate space is from your shoulder to your elbow. So I've had teachers that have been in intimate space who shouldn't be there, like full on shouting, and that gave me like kind of a sense of fear as a child, and you kind of create this relationship in the classroom out of fear rather than support and
love and care,
and care, really, which is where we've kind of evolved into. But it was there's still that kind of element of fear in mainstream.
There is, and in some behaviour policies, there is a part where if a child doesn't behave in the expected manner, then they are just removed and they have to sit on their own in isolation. How would an ADHD child cope with that, or wouldn't they cope?
Yeah, so we don't use isolation at all. Secondary is a good example of still having a lot of isolation booths. So you literally you can go into a room, be left for an extended amount of time. That's actually shown to have a negative impact on mental health. So we would never use isolation as a punishment. We would never use punishment. You have consequences for your actions, but that's different to punishment. So to punish a child through isolation is something that needs to be changed. But you do get these cases where it's still happening today. A lot of my followers on socials have said this is still happening today. I've done a little quote on why isolation is proven to be negative for mental health. And I got various comments saying, "Oh, this still happens to my child, this child, that child." And I'm thinking, why is education not evolving and changing from this? Like, isolation is proven not to work, yet we're still doing it.
Yeah, it seems.
So if for me, if I'm teaching a concept and it's not working, would I keep teaching it, or would I differentiate and have the ability to change it? I'll get pulled in that lesson if I didn't change something that wasn't working.
Yes, it's like the definition of insanity, isn't it? To keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome.
Yeah, we're still using detentions in isolation where they're proven not to work.
So detentions as well. So isolation being removed and placed on your own. Detention being asked to come back at a later date, maybe a lunchtime or after school.
Yeah.
In some schools, I see it where it's almost, we're just going to waste your time. You're going to sit here for an hour and do a meaningless task. Sometimes I've seen it where like the work is expected to be done, but that doesn't often work because the person holding the detention isn't the teacher from the class that they've been removed from. And sometimes I've seen where the children have to come back and they learn about why they're in the detention and maybe like regulating their feelings, and the detentions are taken by trained adults. So it's probably not called detentions, but is that a better use of time, do you think, or have you got a different idea?
We don't use detentions altogether. They're proven not to modify behaviour possibly in any way. We do like repair and reflect exercises, and we'll look at like post incident and then post behaviour, like what you could have done differently. But the example, like the detention's got a point where you'll have a child sat in detention for an hour because they forgot like an item of school clothing, like a tie.
Yeah.
They need to get past all that and actually focus on what is the non-surface behaviour. So why is this person in detention? We don't question that. Like why is this person forgotten a tie? Does they have a tie? So it's things like that. Is the brother threw the tie out, the car window coming in, or what is the root cause of that behaviour? But
I see it at primary sometimes with PE, that the child's not brought their PE kit, and maybe the school policy is that they don't do PE. And I think this child's 5 years old. They're not in a place where they can wash their PE kit or pack it in a bag. There's some level of responsibility there to work with, but it's not the child's fault. It's the same with lateness and attendance. That's huge on the agenda at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, is it the 4-year-old or 5-year-old's fault if they're late?
Yeah, so we have a non-uniform policy. So the children just come in what they're wearing, whatever they're comfortable.
What would your advice be to your younger self? You've been teaching for a few years now. If you looked back, would it be to read more around a certain thing, or educate yourself further in this, or just have a different approach? What would your key advice be?
It would be to explore the PACE approach earlier in my career. So that's obviously playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy, which is a approach made by Dan Hughes, which looks at behaviour and mental health in a different way. So prior to that, I was using quite an assertive approach, like firm but fair, with kind of like two choice ultimatums, right? Do this and then do that. So it was quite, and we were all kind of trained this way. And as a result, like our physical incidents kind of rocketed. And then a few years ago, when we was trying to adopt the Dan Hughes PACE approach, we noticed a massive decline in restraints. We were just able to kind of relate to the children on a more individual level and understand the child more, rather than just kind of dealing to surface behaviour. So like if a child came out of the classroom and kicked the door, we would immediately put like hands on to kind of prevent damage. Yeah. Whereas now we'll be like, come here, come sit down, we'll have a chat about it, and we can de-escalate that without the physical intervention need. So it would be to explore that approach earlier in my career, because I think it would have helped those children out more back then.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining me today. It's been so interesting to talk to you and hear about your experiences in so many different ways. Just really exciting to hear about it. And I'm sure you're going to get lots of people asking you questions and wanting to know more from you. And the BBC stuff sounds great. The DFE stuff sounds fantastic. So looking forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Can't say that bit again, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Which of Jamie's techniques will you try, and what works with your SEND children? Let us know by emailing podcast@whiterosemaths.com or on any of our social media channels. We read and reply to each one and would love to draw upon your thoughts in future episodes.